outcast in society for having sort of a off-brand religion. But why do you think it is that for some people it makes sense that you could have a talking snake in a garden talking people into eating apples for, like you said, the sky man? Why is that considered normal, or that's okay, but kind of embracing the enlightenment of who you are and trying to make yourself centered and be a better person, why is that scoffed at? It seems like in a rational, logical world, the two would be switched. But why do you think it is that that brand is deemed normal and anything outside of that is just can't have it?
That's a lovely question. Okay, so I think that we are evolving, and there's a part of our brain, the mammalian or reptilian and mammalian part of our brains, that are really stuck in survival. Just stuck in survival. So, and when I say stuck in survival, I mean stuck in the comfort zone, stuck in what we know, whether it's true or not.
Right.
Doesn't make any difference. Just
obviously.
Familiar. This must be true. I'm going to stick with this. And so at this stage in our evolutionary journey as human beings, we've had 2,000 years of Christianity and more years of Judaism. Mm-hmm. And so we've got this history that because it feels like it's part of us. And then how can we not believe that stuff? It's too much of a transition for most people to even think that there's a possibility that that is not the truth, because it's so much a part of who we are based on our training and our conditioning, what our forefathers, and even me, like I wasn't even born into a very religious household, but I was born in a Northern European Christian culture. I was born in England. So when I started to really examine feminist spirituality, the author of the book that I was reading, her name's Patricia Lynn Riley, she said, imagine a female God. And I freaked out. Like, that's so, that's blasphemy, that's sinful. And I was already a feminist. I was already open to new thought. I was already training to be a new thought minister. But when someone suggested, imagine a female God, I was so frightened.
Really?
Can I tell you what I was frightened of? I was frightened of being excommunicated as a heretic. Because what if I imagined this female God and I started to really believe that this might be something that was true? And what if I was wrong and the big male daddy God zapped me for it?
and there is where I think the ultimate genius in wherever it ultimately stemmed from, kind of sunk the claws in, so to speak. Like if you are a true believing religious person, the sad thing is that your brain naturally wants to wonder and think, why is it this way? Why does this work this way? But they have planted this switch, this failsafe that will catch you from trying to wander off too far. So that, and I've been there. I mean, like I said, I grew up Southern Baptist, hellfire and brimstone. Anytime you have thoughts that deviated from that path, you then have to stop and go, wait a minute, I'm being unfaithful. This is exactly what they warned me about what happened. And it's a shame to see that your brain is fighting against everything to wake you up and show you that, look, you need to ask questions. You need to, this is not the way that it's supposed to be. But that indoctrination keeps you padlocked to it. And I think that society could just be, I often think all the time how wonderful society could be if that veil was lifted a lot sooner. And maybe you can answer this. I think that you've probably seen an increase in the interest in, especially the kind of alternative spirituality. Have you noticed that? Like, people seem to be finally breaking loose of that and going to, kind of alternative methods. Is that a true statement?
That's definitely my observation too. And when I first came back from America to South Africa to start my church, I met a lot of people who said, "Oh wow, I was already thinking this way, And now I discover there's a church where they teach that stuff. That, like, people didn't realize that there was a church that espoused those principles. And I think what happens, if there is an intention to know the truth or to grow spiritually or to be free, that intention based on the laws of mind that I teach, so there's just that intention to be free and to know the truth, gathers the books, the people, the teachers, the movies, whatever is required for that truth to be taught or understood. So I know that I always had a strong yearning for freedom, and the way it expressed as a younger person, and still today to a certain extent, was I was just a rebel. I was just discounting everything that I was presented with. But that yearning for freedom brought me to South Africa, I believe, and brought me into contact with my spiritual teacher at the church, and brought me into contact with more spiritual teachers in LA. So that yearning is what got me out of the old stultified ways of thinking. And I believe that's true for everybody. So, and that spirit of freedom, I believe, is implanted within us. That's part of our divine nature, that we really yearn to be free. And sometimes that freedom might look like in South Africa, the freedom looked like freedom from apartheid. But there's a real deeper yearning, as far as I'm concerned. It's freedom from the constraints of the mind, freedom from that old reptilian way of thinking, the fight or flight mechanism, freedom from the indoctrination that says you can't, or you're bad, or if you dare to step out, you're going to get zapped. All of that. That's freedom.
Steve, Christopher Hitchens, I think, said it best when he summed it up by saying that traditional religion, you're born sick and commanded to be well. And that is just an ultimate. You can't overcome that. When you're told that you were born into a broken way, and then instructed that you have to now fix yourself, I think it just puts people on an unattainable path. Steve, I know you probably have a question about.
Yeah, I do have a few things. Yeah, it definitely is an indoctrination technique. And of course, I'm not an anti-theist. I'm not against religion at all. I'm not even an atheist, but I do see that there are times where people have used these things as a means to keep people in certain faiths, and that fear factor that people have, as you mentioned, the fight or flight, the predatory prey thing that we've all been exposed to, that reptilian part of our brain that says, hey, we need to be afraid of this because it's detrimental to our health or to our lives. And that fear of the unknown is one of the biggest factors that we have. Matter of fact, when we're born, we're only born with a couple fears, and one of which is things of loud noises. That's a thing where babies will jerk, and they'll know. So there's a fear factor. So we have still things for fear. We want to be saved. We want to be able to procreate. But let me ask you, when it comes to like Holmes, he did a lot when it came to like reading philosophy, right? I mean, he studied the teachings of Jesus and Buddha. He read a lot of the Bible and stuff. So did he think these people were just not of divine origin, but they were just some sort of just wise men, and they took a lot of those teachings and put it all together? Because it does sound a lot like psychism, or at least panpsychism, where there's this universal consciousness and that you're a part of that universal consciousness, whether there's a breakdown where there's this. Normally with psychism, you have a like this, they call it a fluid of some kind, like a soul that's embodied in everything. So everything has a mind. But panpsychism is more that you are part of this universal consciousness. But does that universal consciousness that you're speaking of, is it an aware entity? Is it something that actually created the universe consciously? Or is it something that manifested out of it? For example, like in the Norse tradition, chaos isn't really a actual God per se. It depends on who you ask, but the universe came out of chaos. And so is this a natural extension for the fact that we had a chaos at the initial part of the universe, like, for example, quantum fluctuations? Do you think that the universe was created by this actual being, or it's just a manifestation that resulted from some kind of force? That kind of makes sense, a long-winded way of saying, do you believe how do you believe the universe was created?
Well, one of the terms we use is consciousness. So what came first, the chicken or the egg? Consciousness.
So there was a universal consciousness system.
Yes.
But not like ever heard of a Boltzmann brain?
Sorry,
It's called a Boltzmann brain. A Boltzmann brain is a hypothetical brain that can exist in the universe, but it only exists for like a microsecond. But in that time, the universe actually becomes conscious.
Oh, I had never heard that.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a real thing that, theoretical thing, but, so
that's out there.
A lot of religious teachings are even quantum mechanics, a lot of crazy stuff. But yeah, the reason I'm wondering is because, like I said, I know Holmes, used a lot of things that he read in the building of this, the science of religion, or religion of, I'm sorry, what is it?
Religious science. Yeah.
The science of mind. Yeah. Religious science.
Science.
So did he feel that they were just like very wise men? I mean, what was his actual belief when it came to like Jesus? The Islam religions would say he was a prophet. What would you think Ernest Holmes would have said?
He would have said that he was a highly evolved being who was in touch with his divine origins, probably more than most people who were around at the time. A teacher, and but not the exception. So in Christianity, Jesus is the exception, and we have to be perfect like him in order to hope for salvation. But Ernest Holmes would say that, no, he's not the exception. And he even said, these and greater things shall you do. In other words, we can surpass Jesus with our capacity to create miracles, that kind of thing. So we are the same. Jesus was just more aware of his divine origins than most people are, even today, 2,000 years later.
So he was in tune with it. But did he believe the same things that like you would have believed now? Did he believe that he was just part of this universal consciousness, or did he actually believe that he was literally the son of this anthropomorphic God, according to what Holmes would have said?
Oh, I see. No, I think he would have believed, that he was one with the whole, like part of the universal consciousness. And the teachings, I think, about how in the Bible they talk about the relationship with the Father. So that was just, I believe, a way to explain to the people about the close connection between themselves and this universal consciousness. But they used human analogies to try and express what that relationship was like. But if you have a father who's an autocrat or punishing or drunk or violent, it's not a great way to start to imagine your relationship with the divine. But anyway, that's how it was then, and that's the best they could do.
When researching this, I mentioned it before we started the call, but the first image I have of you is when you're at this conference and you get up and you're doing a speech for women, and you have on this very, very Sunday-looking robe, and you go into your presentation, and you have a very captivating, I think, way of delivering your message. So I kind of want to go into that now. And when looking through the stuff online and reading, I came across a kind of like, it's almost like a bio of you, but it has questions at the bottom. And I've, over the past couple of weeks, looked, and I really can't think of a better way to ask these questions than how they are, because I think that they're familiar enough for people who are, familiar with standard religions to kind of grasp. But I think that the answers are going to be fascinating. So I'd like to ask you a couple, if you don't mind. How has our biblical heritage impacted our relationship to our bodies, our sexuality, and the opposite sex? Because this is kind of your specialty, right? The sexuality behind kind of spirituality. So let's dive right into that.
Okay. So I believe that the whole Adam and Eve story was a wonderful patriarchal myth, that it was a tool of political control. And before Genesis, the matriarchal religions were the power. The people worshipped the goddess, and before people knew that men impregnated women, they saw that women gave birth, and they assumed that women must have given birth to the planet. There must be a great mother that has given birth to the earth. They saw that women bled and didn't die. So they understood that the blood must be a mystical mystical thing that women can bleed and not die. That's an amazing thing.